President Trump is rejecting the revised death toll from Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. Earlier, he tweeted 3,000 people did not die in the two hurricanes that hit the island. He also said there were 6 to 18 deaths when he visited Puerto Rico after the storm.
The president went on to blame Democrats for trying to make him look as bad as possible when he was successfully raising billions of dollars to help rebuild Puerto Rico. Well, Puerto Rico Governor Ricardo Rosselló is with us now. Governor, I think the first thing we want to ask you is, how do you react to a tweet like that?
Well, first of all, my thoughts and prayers with the people of Carolina. Of course, we know what they're going through, or going to go through, and we're here to help. Secondly, with regards to the message, I just have to say that neither the people of Puerto Rico nor the victims deserve their pain to be questioned. We went through a rigorous scientific process. We externalized the investigation so that it was an independent investigation. In a previous lifetime, I was a scientist, so I evaluated all that went through, and we are very confident that under the current situations here in Puerto Rico, the value of the investigation was very good. It was very robust, and therefore that's why I decided to take the initiative to establish as the official death toll number the 2,975 that the investigation threw out. So we are confident in that estimate. We need to clarify that it's always, at least at this juncture, going to be an estimate, but we're confident that it is very much so around that number.
Governor, I just want to read for our viewers the tweet that the president posted earlier today. He wrote this: after the storm hit, they had anywhere from 6 to 18 deaths. As time went by, it did not go up by much. Then, after a long time later, they started to report really large numbers, like 3,000. This was done by the Democrats to make me look as bad as possible. Governor, what are the nearly 3 million Puerto Ricans you represent saying to you about the President of the United States seemingly politicizing the deaths of nearly 3,000 citizens of this country?
Well, we can't politicize this. Nobody can. We need to be above that sort of discussion. And certainly there's a reason why the number, the death toll sort of rose significantly. We had an inadequate mechanism protocol when the storm came through Puerto Rico. As soon as we realized that it was inadequate and under the lackluster conditions that we had here in Puerto Rico, we embarked on looking for a study that would be independent and that would give us a real scientific estimate on what the death toll was in Puerto Rico. And that's why there is that seemingly high jump. But really, if you listen to all of our communications, mine in particular, every time we spoke about the death toll numbers in the early going after the storm, we always knew that number was going to be much higher. We just needed to have a real, a better mechanism for identifying them.
Governor, that report that you commissioned from George Washington University, it didn't just determine the death toll. It also made a list of recommendations to help Puerto Rico moving forward should it have to deal with another natural disaster like this. The president won't even acknowledge that death toll number is accurate. How confident are you that the federal government will be there should you face another hurricane or something else?
Well, we are hopeful that they are going to continue to be here. I mean, we are U.S. citizens. The federal government needs to do right by our U.S. citizens, and so far, as I stated in the past, we've had good relationships. We've had good results on some parts and bad results on some part. Now, our job as leaders is not to fuss over it or to fight. Our job is to identify what is done well and keep on doing it, and what was done wrong, mitigate it and do it better moving towards the future. So I am hopeful that this will be the case, but I want to take the opportunity because it's very important. A lot of folks are concerned about the treatment of the people of Puerto Rico, and I am grateful for that empathy. The truth of the matter is that unequal treatment has been in Puerto Rico for over a century. We are a colonial territory of the United States, and the unequal treatment stems from treatment in Medicaid, federal programs, lacking political power so that we can have representation, So my petition to all of the viewers, and particularly to all elected officials, is if we really want to do something about this inequality, we need to do something about the second-class citizenship treatment that U.S. citizens get in Puerto Rico. We need to eradicate colonialism in the United States. I mean, how can we be, as the United States, how can we be the standard bearer of democracy in the world if we don't value democracy in our own backyard? How can we have over 3 million U.S. citizens that don't have the right to vote, that are disenfranchised, and that after the storm, it is evident that the treatment that was given, say, in Florida or in Texas was very different than the treatment given in Puerto Rico. So I am hopeful that as we continue having this conversation, as we get the opportunity in programs such as this to express our views and to showcase what the needs of the people of Puerto Rico, we will also tackle the underlying problem here. We are second-class U.S. citizens. We live in a colonial territory. It is time to eliminate that. And I implore all of the elected officials, particularly now in midterm elections, to have a firm stance. You're either for colonial territories or against it. You're either for giving equal rights to the U.S. citizens that live in Puerto Rico, or you're against it. I challenge all of the elected officials to state their position, and it's time to put up or shut up.
Governor, you're right to point out the historic relationship between the United States and Puerto Rico, and that it has not been one that has served the interests of our fellow Americans living on the island. But you did also say that the treatment of Puerto Rico in the wake of the hurricanes was much different than it was on the mainland here in the United States. Doesn't that responsibility lie and rest with the President of the United States?
Well, there is much responsibility to go around. But again, I want to establish that there is a precondition to this unequal treatment. Now, we can discuss and analyze whether it is the president, whether it is some agencies. I can tell you that with my interactions with the president, the petitions, in most cases that we've made, have been handled. And as a matter of fact, we have an outstanding petition right now, and I would like to take the opportunity to channel that. Puerto Rico is still in the recovery phase, and our, the extension for the 100% cost share of the emergency work that's being done in Puerto Rico stopped. And we asked for an extension. FEMA denied it, but we were able to appeal it, and that appeal goes up to the president. So
Governor, then what you're saying, and you've talked about the plans that you have in place right now with the federal government. Are you saying then, when the president last month talked about the response, the federal response in Puerto Rico, he said it was, quote, fantastic? Do you agree with the president?
No, I've stated previously that there can be no fantastic response as long as we are treated as second-class citizenship. This is, and the recovery, I've stated this also from the very get-go. The recovery is a long process. We're going to be evaluated on the results. And as I've stated, there are some things that have been great. Our relationship with HUD, the work that was done by the DOD here in Puerto Rico was outstanding. But by the same token, the work on the energy buildup by the Corps of Engineers, or some of the additional bureaucratic hurdles that we've had with FEMA, and some of the obstacles dating back to a controversy that we have today, where 12 million bottles of water were essentially left in a runway. So some of those things are very concerning as well. What we need to do, and I think as elected officials, and commitment to our people, is make sure that we keep on doing the good things, keep them on the right track, but identifying those things that are wrong and not be afraid to recognize. I mean, I have been one that, I haven't been shy to recognize some of my own failings in these process. And the reason is the only way to make them better in the future is to recognize them in the first place, so that then you can mitigate them towards the next event. So that is my commitment. I hope that it's the same commitment with the federal government. And I hope that the conversation with the White House continues. It has been an open conversation. It has been, we've had a very good relationship in that sense. But there have been some good things and some bad things in this recovery.
Governor, I'm glad you brought up the bottles of water because I do want to ask you about that. Before that, though, I just want to address something else that's in the president's tweet today. He blamed the Democrats for the death toll. Do the Democrats have anything to do with this report from the University of George Washington?
Well, first of all, full disclosure, I am a Democrat, so I don't know if that's pointing towards my direction. But the reality is that we tried to make this process a completely independent process. What did we do? We recognized that there was a flaw in the death toll count and in the communications of public health emergencies. So we sanctioned an independent group to do a study to make it transparent. The data's out there so that people can see, and that we could actually arrive at the best possible estimate under the circumstances. I do not believe that it is in any way, shape, or form, interfered by not only Democrats but by anything else other than a scientific commitment to finding out the truth with what happened here in Puerto Rico.
Right, because you are a Democrat, but it wasn't the Democrats, the party, the political party, that commissioned this report.
No, it was me. It was the government of Puerto Rico. I commissioned it. I asked for it to be independent. I asked for them to disclose the information to me the same day that they disclosed it to the public. And that's why, there have been other reports, right? There have been some reports that had about 1,000. There have been other reports that had over 4,000. But in this one, there was a strong, what I feel is a strong scientific basis for arriving at that number, and that recognizing always that it is an estimate, it allows us to, have some solace, to grieve with the families, and to use this moment, that was a catastrophe for Puerto Rico, so that we can remember those that lost their lives, but at the same time have the firm conviction that we can get up from this and rebuild a stronger, better Puerto Rico. Now, in order to do that, we really are going to need all of our stakeholders. We're really going to need the federal government. We're really going to need the Congress to be part of this rebuild. And it's a long-term effort. So hopefully the issue keeps on going. But without this opportunity to have this platform and talk to you about it, you have to recognize that different from Florida or different than Texas or different than Idaho, we don't have senators. We don't have House representatives that have, voting members in Congress. We don't have a right to vote for the president. And that really limits our wherewithal and our capability. I hope that within, what was a catastrophe of Maria, we can finally do with the unfinished business of American democracy and eradicate these second-class citizenship concept and the colonialism once and for all.
It appears as if the president is dismissing the conclusion of this report. Has anybody from the White House called you up and talked to you about the report?
Well, our team, our Federal Affairs Office has discussed with several members of the White House the report. I haven't personally done so, but again, allow me to say this. In the past, and my formal training is as a scientist. So I very much value the way these processes are done. When the GW effort started, they explained to me what their architecture was going to be. And then I saw, once they handed in the results, what their process was, what the uncertainties were. And I am, very confident that it was a well done scientific process that will give an estimate of the numbers, but more so than that, will help us prepare better towards the future for a future catastrophe.
Governor, for the millions of Puerto Ricans who are watching this broadcast, for the millions of Americans here on the mainland who are watching our broadcast, give us a sense of what the people are telling you, what they are saying to you about how they feel, not just a historic connection that the United States has with Puerto Rico, but how they feel they've been treated in the wake of this hurricane. When they see tweets like this from the President of the United States, whose traditional job is as consoler-in-chief just as much as he is the commander-in-chief, and when they read a tweet like this from the President of the United States suggesting that those 3,000 the 3,000 who ultimately were killed in the wake of this hurricane has to do with politics. I just want to get a sense, and for those people who are here in the United States on the mainland who are watching, who are of Puerto Rican descent, what are people telling you?
Well, people are tired of seeing the devastation and the catastrophe used for political purposes. In general, whether it be a tweet or whether it be a statement, they really want to get results. And, it's the bureaucracy, the obstacles that we've had in this process, no pain. But I've had to go all around the island and see how the people of Puerto Rico are responding now. I have to say that a lot of progress has been made. It is important to cover the progress as well. Puerto Rico has the lowest unemployment rate in our modern history. We've broken over 1 million jobs for the first time in about 6 years. Crime rates are down. There's an education reform going, but there are still a lot of obstacles, particularly in the hardest hit areas, in the most vulnerable areas. There are still over 45,000 folks without roofs. There is still a weak energy grid in Puerto Rico that if we get another devastation, it is likely to collapse. So I think that the people of Puerto Rico, and the feedback that I've been getting is that, they are tired of seeing this used as a political football, and they are anxious to see results. Now, I can tell you that our people are so resilient. That has been the most impressive thing about this whole process right now. Not a lot of folks can withstand a whole year without electricity, and some folks did here in Puerto Rico. I hope that we can use that resiliency, use that strength and heart, and now rebuild stronger than ever before. I hope, and it is my expectation, that the federal government, local governments, and everybody, the Congress, they don't forget about Puerto Rico now as we're entering the most critical phase, which is the rebuild. So people are tired of hearing this used as a political football, but there is cautious optimism that if we in fact focus on all of the resources that are coming in, historical amounts of resources that are coming into Puerto Rico, we can really rebuild Puerto Rico to be a model for all of the United States and frankly, all of America in terms of resiliency, strength of infrastructure, energy, and quality of water, amongst other things. So please keep your eyes set on this story. Keeping us honest, and would love to keep on participating on this show so that we can cover the progress in Puerto Rico. And the word that I've been using, that people have been telling me a lot, that has led me to believe that there is optimism towards the future, is construimos, which means we build. We're here to rebuild. Right now, it is a time to start seeing how we can pivot away from the recovery and start in a strong rebuild for Puerto Rico. And without a doubt, the federal government is going to be the major stakeholder in that process.
So, Governor, you mentioned that you're requesting a continued support from FEMA. And now, we've learned over the past couple of days or so about some of FEMA's resources that have been squandered or wasted, talking about these millions of bottles of water that have been sitting at an airport runway in Puerto Rico since last fall. So earlier, we were able to speak to the FEMA's Deputy Administrator, Daniel Kanuski. We asked him about that. This is what he said on CBS this morning. I want you to take a listen, okay?
Those were excess water bottles. Those were not needed during the response phase and were not distributed by the government of Puerto Rico or FEMA for that reason.
Well, the optics sure look bad, but you're telling us you're comfortable with how FEMA handled that situation.
I am, and we'll be putting out a statement later today with an exact timeline for this situation. I'm confident that those that needed those bottles of water got them during the response phase, and that these were excess bottles of water that were, again, transferred to save money for the American taxpayer in January.
Okay, so he says they were excess bottles of water. Governor, according to a new Washington Post, a Kaiser Family Foundation survey, 50% of Puerto Ricans say that people in their households could not get enough water to drink. You mentioned the need for water. This is in the year since Maria hit. If water was put on the runway, why was it not used?
You know, there's many questions to be answered. I am appalled by this whole situation. I was, you know, it's important to state the timeline here. A couple of days back, you know, the FEMA had placed the responsibility squarely on the government of Puerto Rico. Of course, we went through what was an investigation of what happened there. Luckily for us, there is satellite evidence, there is photographic evidence, and there is electronic evidence that points out to the responsibility of FEMA for those water bottles. Number one, the ownership of those bottles. Number two, in terms of the timeline, by the end of January, they started putting these you know, massive amounts of water in a runway, exposed to sunlight and to rain, which of course could damage those goods. Number three, it wasn't up until mid-April that they put it on a website, and I have over here the evidence that they put it on a website, their GSA website, where they put a picture of some of these pallets of water, and they seem to be in some sort of storage facility as well. So when they put it out there as excess water for anybody to pick up, somebody you know, in our government looked at it and say, hey, let's see if we can use this water to distribute it across Puerto Rico. Of course, when they went to pick up the water, they saw that this water was essentially exposed and probably damaged at that time. So I think there are several questions that need to be answered clearly over here. Why did you take water bottles, 12 million bottles of water bottles that were needed in Puerto Rico, and not distribute them when there was need? Number two, why did you take them out of a storage facility and expose them to being damaged? Number three, why did it take 2 months, 2.5 months after exposing them in a runway in order for you to put them as excess so that somebody, not only in Puerto Rico, but anywhere in the nation, could pick them up and could give them good use? So there's many questions, and I hope, it is my expectation that FEMA answers them to give clarity to this situation and to clearly state, you know, somewhat different from their first position, that this really was not the doing of the government of Puerto Rico. Again, satellite picture over here, sorry to be so rudimentary, but satellite pictures over here in February show that while these bottles of water that were you know, owned and managed by FEMA, they were already being put on that runway. So there's a lot of questions to be answered regarding that, and of course, I don't think there is excess commodities here. We can certainly use all the commodities that we can get here in Puerto Rico.
So, Governor, is FEMA responsible for distribution, and are you saying that FEMA did not alert you in a timely manner that this water was available?
Well, FEMA and the government of Puerto Rico, they work together to distribute this, right? But certainly the decision, having the folks that owned these water were FEMA, and the decision to take them out and put them, you know, exposed to the elements was FEMA's own. And the identification of these resources, so that not only Puerto Rico, it's just happenstance that the folks of Puerto Rico identified them, but anybody across the nation could have picked those up as excess water through the GSA website. Happened, you know, 2.5 months after they started putting these you know, these water bottles exposed to the elements out there. So I think, again, there's a lot of questions to be answered. On my own and on my watch, I am working on a full administrative investigation from our counterparts at GSA in Puerto Rico, so that we can see what you know, if there was controls that weren't met. There were actions that weren't taken, and certainly we will take affirmative actions if there was wrongdoing on our part.
Okay, Governor, clearly 1 year on, there's still a lot of work to be done. We really appreciate you talking to us. Governor Ricardo Rosselló of Puerto Rico, thank you.
Thank you.